Okay, welcome to Hack Job Studios, where we sift through the doldrums of media, both beloved and forgotten, and bring you pitches for unwanted sequels, unwarranted remakes, and unwatchable soft reboots. Today on the show, the scary movie franchise. Was it ever good? And if so, what the hell happened? We're your host. I'm Joe.
And I'm James DePiro.
All right. Oh, we're giving last names. I'm Joe Keogh. All right. So, we're talking about the scary movies tonight. I Before we actually get into it though, let's just do like a little recap of our week, as far as like media goes. Did you see anything this week, James? You want to bring up? Just casual little mentions.
Well, I know I've been following two series. They're more in the anime version, but I consider them very good shows to pick up on if you're a fan of that genre. Mob Psycho 100, which is sort of the slice of life version of One Punch Man, and then you have JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is a very popular show, and it seems to take a good twist on a lot of the different tropes. But as far as that goes, that's probably what I've been picking up on. But I wish to expand my things a little bit further into the future.
All right. Well, we don't want to dwell on this, but I do have to ask: how the hell do you have a slice of life version of One Punch Man? That is intriguing to me.
So, Mob Psycho is created by the same writer of One Punch Man, and he's a sort of a person who writes about overpowered characters in a and just sort of subverts that trope. So One Punch Man, for those of you who haven't seen, is just a guy that could defeat everything in one punch. Mob Psycho is about a middle schooler who's unprecedented in psychic ability. He can literally defeat any psychic, any ghost in one hit. But what this show does that's different from One Punch Man is that One Punch Man focuses on one's ability to just be a recognized person using his powers, whereas Mob Psycho, it sort of ignores the fact that he's this powerful psychic and instead looks at him as a middle schooler just trying to fit in with his normal peers.
That sounds like fun. I'll have to check that out sometime.
It's a really good really good take on that sort of stuff.
So for me, I saw Captain Marvel a couple days ago, and yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I know there was a decent amount of criticism out there, and I actually get where a lot of it is coming from. Um, but I think it was good enough to really do its job as something that like gets us more excited for Endgame and like introduces a character that's like really important. A lot of the criticism, and I don't want to really spoil anything, but a lot of people say that Brie Larson's character wasn't super interesting, and I get that. I don't really want to put all the blame on her, though. I think that a big problem, in my view, was the direction to go with the whole amnesia angle, and that's not really spoiling anything because they like start right out the gate with like, yeah, she has amnesia, she doesn't remember her life, and I don't know if that's in the comics. James, you never read those comics, right?
Yeah, I'm not a personal reader of Captain
Yeah.
Marvel.
I know you know a lot more about comics than me, but that particular one, I wouldn't expect. Yeah, I'll have to ask my brother. I think he knows them. But I don't know. I felt like it kind of prevented me from having like a really good connection with the character like right out the gate. And it's a shame too because there's this other theme that they had going on where it was like the idea of her being kept down like her whole life by people who are telling her that she's more like too emotional, and I thought that was like a great theme. I thought that fits really well with what they're trying to do with the character, with her being like this image of like the strong woman, and that's like a really cool way of addressing that like trope. Problem with that though is that they introduced that in the beginning and then they just completely forgot about it until the very end. And I thought that it really would have been a lot better if that was the theme they were harping on throughout the entire movie, rather than this just boring "I don't know who I am" thing.
Well, yeah, it's all that concept of origin story versus actually trying to create sensible character development and trying to fit them both into a 1.5 or 2 hour movie.
Right. And I get that if you have comics to draw from and they really matter to people, maybe that's what happened. I don't know. But you do have to balance those things. But I was just kind of disappointed by that. But I would not fret. I would not freak out if you're a Marvel fan, if you're a Captain Marvel fan, if you love the MCU. There will be plenty other movies with her, plenty of other directors at the helm with other interpretations. You take Thor, for instance. The first two Thor movies were boring as hell, and I never really connected with the character of Thor throughout the first two Avengers movies as well. He was like one of the most boring Avengers. And then Ragnarok comes out, and now Thor is one of my favorite characters in there because that movie was just so good and it did so much with his character. So there's plenty of time. There will be other movies, and it's clear that Disney likes her and wants to do stuff with her. So I'm not worried. All right. Unless you have anything else you want to throw out there, let's get into Scary Movie.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about. I mean, it's been a while since I've watched one and two. I mean, when I was like a teenager. So looking at it at when I'm much older with a little bit more experience and stuff, um, it really, it's really different than when I remember it.
So I'll be honest, I had never seen these. I it was
Okay,
I mean, they came out. I was what, 7? We were both pretty young because this was 2000.
2000, 2001.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2000 and 2001. So like, I certainly wasn't seeing those in theaters. My parents would never have let that happen. Um,
Oh yeah, like after watching it and watching, there's a lot of stuff I forgot, and
right.
with good reason.
Yeah, and there, when I was like, a little older, like early teens, I saw a couple of the later Friedberg and Seltzer movies, like your Meet the Spartans and your like epic movies and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And I think we'll probably talk more about that later on and how like these movies kind of led into those because those movies are a goddamn mess. Um, but yeah, I hadn't actually seen these, and I'll be honest, I didn't love them.
Hmm.
I have more good things to say about Scary Movie 1. Not a surprise there, but even so, like there's a lot here.
Well, yeah, and it's even. I mean, even the first scary movie, they consider it the best one, but that's putting it in the heaviest of quotations, considering that
Right.
it's mediocre at best, and I think it was more so relying on its shock jock humor rather than
Right.
actually trying to progress a story.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about all of that, but before we get there, I just want to give a really brief plot summary. In the future, because I know that we might not even release this episode, and if we do, it's gonna be like one of our first ones, so we won't have given you guys the chance to like watch this movie ahead of time. But we're gonna try to in the future when we do these like lay out for you like this is what we're doing next week so you get a chance to see it. But if you haven't seen these movies, good for you. um, but,
Save
but
that brain space.
yeah, but if you haven't seen these movies, so here's just a basic rundown. So we got the first Scary Movie. It's a 2000 movie directed by Keenan Ivory Wayans, and written by Sean Waynes, Marlon Wayans, Buddy Johnson, Phil Bowman, Jason Friedberg, and Aaron Seltzer. Those two we're going to come back to later. Um, Starring a bunch of people, but the most important is we got Anna Faris in there, and she stays pretty much throughout all the movies. She's probably one of the few people in these that you'll have heard of. Very prominent nowadays. We have Marlon Wayans and Sean Wayans are both they are recurring characters for the first two, and Regina Hall. Those are the four characters that we see between the two movies. And then yeah, we have other people that like I don't want to say they're not worth mentioning, but Shannon Elizabeth, John Abrahams, Dave Sheridan, and actually Carmen Electra. She's a pretty big
Oh
name.
yeah.
We'll be mentioning. I'll talk about her a little bit when we talk about the intro, because it kind of sets the scene for these movies and like the type of humor. Not great stuff. But anyway, the the movie it follows Anna Faris's character Cindy Campbell, and she is kind of like if you've seen The Cabin in the Woods, she's like the virgin trope of these kind of like slasher teen movies, and they kind of make fun of that in a scene, which is actually like one of the better little jokes. And we'll talk about what makes this movie a little bit better than the other one. But anyway, it's really it's your stereotypical slasher movie, but it's a spoof of that. They're being hunted by this like crazed murderer who looks like the ghost face guy from Scream, and it's a bunch of friends that are being killed one by one, and they're like afraid that this is some sort of revenge for something that happened a year ago when they supposedly killed, or maybe not even killed, a guy who they hit with their car, kind of like a "I know what you did last summer" kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, it goes from there. It gets crazy. People get killed in different ways and at different levels of seriousness throughout. And the plot plays out like your stereotypical slasher film, but it does have a lot of spoof elements in it. Then you get Scary Movie 2, which is a 2001 movie, also directed by Keenan Ivory Wayans, also written by Marlon Wayans, Sean Wayans, and a couple other co-writers, but not Friedberg and Seltzer. They left to go produce their own stuff. Um, and this movie, this one is based more around like a haunted house kind of thing. I think it's drawing most from what I think it looks like kind of like Poltergeist. I don't really I've never seen a lot of these movies.
Yeah, I know it narrates. It goes from obviously The Exorcist at the
The
beginning,
Exorcist, yeah, that's like
bounces around
their
to Poltergeist, The Haunting of House Hill, things like that. Just the typical generic
right.
haunting.
Yeah. And Anna Faris is back, Regina Hall's back, Sean Wayans is back, Marlon Wayans is back. There's a lot of other characters. They don't really do much with them. Much, bigger names like David Cross and Tim Curry is actually in
Yeah,
here. Don't get too excited though, because they criminally underuse him. He dies like halfway through the movie and does nothing. It's really
you don't
disappointing.
even see how he dies. You just kind of they
Yeah,
show him and then that's it.
there's so much more they could have done with him, but
Oh yeah, I have words for like the way they could have altered the comedy of this movie.
right. So let's actually talk about the comedy.
All right.
So you can start here, James, because I know I've been dominating. But what did you think of the comedy of
So,
both?
I would consider it to be understandable. We're in the first movie. You have you're pretty much introducing a genre of comedy that has been touched upon, but not to the level of this. You have a lot of the sort of the shock jock humor, but with the introduction of tons of bodily fluids and sexuality, with the keyword being sexuality, something that hasn't really been touched on as much as this movie in the era that it was made in.
Right,
Uh,
and these
okay.
are like spoof movies, right? So it,
Yes.
it kind of follows in the like the footsteps of like Mel Brooks movies in the 70s into Zucker brother movies in the 80s, like Airplane and The Naked Gun. And then now we're kind of passing it on to a new generation, and the Wayans brothers are kind of taking that up here, and they bring it into very much like the kind of thing that you would expect of very crass lowbrow bro humor from the early 2000s.
Well, and the
Just
issue with that is that when you think of like a Mel Brooks movie or the Airplane series, what they spoof on or what they're parodizing is the trope of it, whereas this movie sort of does it based off of the movie, and they're hoping that
right.
the movie introduces the trope,
Yes.
which this is where it gets its sort of mediocrity from, and the comedy doesn't feel as fresh as it could have been.
Yeah, and that we see that right away in Scary Movie, the first one. I mean, the guy's mask is literally straight out of Scream. So you don't
Hmm.
really need to think too much. There's not a lot of like they don't have to do that much work as writers to make you think of Scream if they're just going to put Scream mask right on there.
Well, that's also the issue is that the movie Scream is actually a satire on the horror trope of the
Right.
slasher trope. So I'm guessing they're probably thinking, hey, if Scream is satirizing the slasher trope, and if we parody Scream, then we don't have to do as much as the work because hopefully they'll relate the two, and we get to bring a much more lightheartedness because satire is usually seen as more of a depressing side of like a depressing commentary of what you're trying to discuss.
Right. I mean, you have like spoof is a type of satire, right? But it's a lot lighter, and it doesn't really say as much important stuff. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. You can have really good spoof movies. Like if you think about like early Mel Brooks stuff, right? I would consider like the producers and like Blazing Saddles more in like the realms of satire. They actually have something important to say. You know,
Mhm.
they're talking about like Nazism and like American race relations. But then when you get to like something like Spaceballs, that's not really saying anything important, but it's still a great movie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
they replaced the lampooning parody or the lampooning satire, which I guess is the what parody is, with when you're taking away from that, you got to steal from Peter to pay Paul. So if you're taking away from the lampooning, then you got to offer something in return. In this case, the word of Spaceballs, a good compelling story with good character development.
right. And you can have fun with spoofs. You can have fun like just introducing ideas that people like. And instead of like saying something biting about society, you're just taking tropes that you see and exaggerating them a little bit and getting comedy out of there. So it's not because these are spoof movies that they're not bad because they're spoof movies. More could have been done with them, but they didn't really rise to the occasion. And I think you really got to the point there with the idea of we don't have to do a lot of work if we just show them the thing. Show them the scary the ghost face mask. Show them the girl dolled up like the Exorcist girl. We don't have to do any work. And then once they bring in this image of the movie, what do they do with it? They just make it a little grosser. Like the scene where the girl in The Exorcist like throws up. Well, what was their take on that was we're gonna make her throw up longer. Ooh, let's get James Woods to throw up now.
Oh,
Like,
and actually, I know I might be a little bit out of context here, but what would have been really good, comedy based or comedy wise, is have you ever seen the movie The Shining, Joe?
sure,
Okay.
not in a long time, but yes, I
Do you
have seen.
remember the blood wave scene?
Yeah,
Okay, so imagine, so there's a part in the movie where yeah they're having this huge throw up contest, right? And then there's part of the scene is it pans out of the room or it shoots out of the room to the mother, and the mother's there in horror downstairs. What if instead of that she's down the hallway and then she sees the exact shining wave, except instead of blood it's throw up, right? And it's things like that they could have done instead of saying, oh, let's just lampoon The Exorcist. Why not extend it to other horror tropes or other like, because the blood wave scene is considered one of the most scariest things in that movie or the most unsettling movie. So why not just subvert that and just make it the wave of puke, and it has you have a sort of great transition and it makes sense. You're like, oh, they're throwing up. I guess it's like, that's a
right.
lot of throw up. Instead, they just clean everything off like it never happened. And you're like, no, let's take it somewhere and then clean everything up. So you
Yeah,
could,
it's weird because it doesn't feel like it's in service of anything. Like
yeah,
I think they're just trying to be gross just to be gross. Like they're in the first movie, the first scene right away, there's a part where Carmen Electra farts, and then the guy on the other side of the phone is like, "What was that?" And she says, "I farted," and that's it.
yep.
That's the joke. That's all we did. That's our joke. Like to be a comedy writer in 2001, like it would be so easy.
And
It's like, oh, it's Y2K, but instead of not being able to control your computers, you can't control your bowels. Except that has more like actual social commentary than these. They just throw it in there and just see what sticks.
yeah, and I think the reason
That was
why,
that was a lot grosser than I intended it to be.
well, I think the reason why they attempt to repeat that same humor over and over again is I think the reason why Scary Movie 1 received what it did and was okay in its regard is because everybody watching it said they thought it was a one-off. They said, okay,
Right.
this is
Well,
funny. We recognize the tropes of the horror. You subverted it and then pooped on it. Okay, that's you get a little like unsettled laugh. You threw some sex and some shock humor. Okay, we could just take it. We could just move on. But no, they didn't. They brought
Well,
it back.
that was something I actually wanted to mention, like the difference between these movies, right? Because
Hmm.
they feel very similar. Like we're talking about them interchangeably, going back and forth with things that we just didn't like to see, and talking about them like they were the same. But and that was like when I sat down to do this before I watched these movies, the thing I thought was, what I want to see is what happened. Why is the first one regarded well, and why is the second one not? And I figured it's got to be one of two things, right? It's either A, the first one somehow caught lightning in a bottle. It got everything right, or at least enough right to be like a good, funny movie. And then the second one just didn't touch on that. It didn't catch the things that it needed to. Or the other option, which honestly I think was a lot more likely, and it looks to be the case, um, it's just the same damn movie, and the gimmick was good once, and they didn't do anything fresh with it. It's basically The Hangover Part 2.
Yeah, you're telling the same joke twice.
Yeah, it's hangover syndrome. I'm gonna
Hmm.
call it that from now on.
Well, that and it also mimics a lot of the old '90s road trip tropes as well. Where I don't know if you've seen a lot of the road trip movies, but that was a huge genre back in the '90s where uh, kid goes on road trip with people, crazy wacky shit happens, and
Hmm.
then the movie ends. Like it's
I had a friend in high school whose dad thought I looked like Tom Green from the Road Trip movie.
oh yeah.
I never forgave him for that.
Well,
it
as
was
you shouldn't. They were always terrible.
it was
It's
probably the beard. Let's be real. Um, no, but I think that is the case, that these are kind of the same movie, but I do think there are some subtle differences, and I do want to talk about those because I think that can help us really get into where we want to land with this, which is what happened to this genre? Why is it dead? And what would it take for us to try and bring it back if that was something we felt inclined to do?
mhm.
I think that the first movie, there actually is, like, they both have pretty like cookie cutter plots of like just taking horror movies that people recognize and throwing it in there. But I do want to give the first one credit in saying that it actually does have a little bit to say about the genre. It is pointing out ridiculous things that people might actually be like expecting to see.
Mhm.
Like the scene, and it's such a basic, simple, nuanced way of making this joke. But the scene where Carmen Electra runs out the door, and there's two signs, and one says death, and the other says safety, and she runs towards death.
Mhm.
Right? I have seen that joke done so many different ways since then, in much better ways. I've seen it done better in Geico commercials. But I have to give this movie credit in being, I don't want to say the first, but the first that I've noticed. It was an early way of pointing that out. Hey, teenagers make really stupid decisions in these movies. They could easily live if they weren't just dumb, and it's all like very plot contrived. So things
Mhm.
like that, little things like that, that I think really they do help make the first movie at least say something. I don't think the second movie says anything at all. I think it is just pulling from the movies that people recognize, and not really spoofing the whole idea of a ghost story. The ghost story itself is, honestly, it plays pretty straight, right? It's a guy, and he's like murdered by his wife, and now he's haunting his wife. And there's a lot of like gross out stuff that they do with the ghost. They make him like a bit of a perv, and they make the like interact the relationships between the family like kind of weird. But they're not really saying anything about the genre. Like it's just it's really, the plot of that movie is not a plot.
Yeah.
It's a setting. The plot is the setting.
Well, what I always
The,
thought was weird was the when the second movie opens up into the house with everybody singing the rap song on the piano with the priests, and you have the girl,
uh,
right? I
and
it
I'll mention, I got something to say about that rap song, but you go because
Okay,
that's
yeah,
gonna
we can go
come
back
later.
to that. It's the whole idea is like the girl's living in the house, correct, with her family.
Right.
Is
And it,
is that family the same people who died and are now like is the dad the guy who's haunting the house?
See, I don't think so,
And
but
if
maybe.
yeah, if so, what happened to the daughter?
Right.
This just doesn't happen.
I don't think. I don't think. I mean, there are certain
It's
things that I will give these movies a pass on for being like not addressing, but other things that I would like them to address. But yeah, no, that was really dumb. But I think that my point here is like they use the plot as a setting.
yes.
This is not a spoof comedy movie. It is a spoof comedy sketch show. They're just going from stupid joke to stupid joke, and they're just setting it in a poltergeist movie. The first one had a little bit more of a movie. I was never bored in the first movie. I was really bored in the second. Both of
Mhm.
them made me cringe. Both of them I was annoyed by. But the first one I was not bored. The second one I was. And it might have been having to do with the whole gimmick thing. But I think it also had to do with the plot. And it also had to do, I think I want to bring in I want to compare the characterizations. Because in the first one, they don't do very much to really like give these characters depth, but at least they do something.
Yeah, it's
In this,
just one character trait, I
yeah,
guess each person has.
in the second movie they do nothing.
Well,
So
they try to hold on to those character traits, but when you have to when you have to use plot devices and props in order hey, remember everybody, this guy's a stoner. Hey, remember
right,
everybody, this guy's gay.
well the
Then
characters are props, like that's
exactly.
what they are. And I also, you mentioned gay. These movies are very dated in that regard as well.
Hmm.
Like very cringeworthy, not cool by today's standards as far as the way they discuss homosexual characters. A lot of really uncomfortable, rapey stuff.
Hmm.
And in some cases, I'm willing to look back at a movie from 2001 and give it a pass because it was a different time. I don't really feel like standing up for these movies though, because there's nothing going for them otherwise. They're just dumb. Um, but yeah, no, the characters mean nothing. In the first movie, they at least introduce them. They give them personalities.
And they
They
drive
have
the plot forward.
Right. They have that scene that I thought was kind of charming where Anna Faris and Regina Hall are talking about their friend Buffy and they're like, "Oh my god, she's so shallow, she's so fake. Everybody hates her. Like she doesn't care about anything." And then she walks up and they're like, "Hey Buffy, what's up?" Again, seen that joke done before, seen it done better, but it's a funny little thing.
Well,
Um
then they turn it on its head because the expectation is the fact that it's just this normal girl, and the other two are just kind of jealous of her because she has this okay life, and they're like, oh, she's so fake and whatnot. So it's typical teenage movie trope. But then she comes over, and then she's like, is he gone? Rips off her clothes and says, okay, fuckers, let's do this. Or bitches, let's do this. So it takes the trope of the girls gossiping about the fakeness of the girl, of the other girl, and then they turn it on its head because the girl is fake.
right.
So
And
that's kind of good, right? It's good writing in
yeah,
that sort of aspect.
and I also thought her death scene was really funny.
Oh
How
yeah,
she didn't take any of it seriously, and like up until the point where she's stabbed, you expect all that, but then she gets stabbed, and she's like, "Oh, I guess this is the part where I die." Then, like, I appreciated that.
hmm
And another thing, they kill off Regina Hall and Sean Wayne's character at the end of one, and then they bring him back with no explanation in the second one, which for movies of this caliber I don't mind. What I would have loved to have seen is them jokingly address that. Just
yeah,
mention it in some joking way. Don't try to make it serious because that would be dumb, but like use that as an opportunity to make fun of other things where that happened. That would
yeah.
have been great.
Well,
They didn't.
I would like to give it. I'm gonna try to give it some credit and say that it's trying to make fun of the whole trope, kind of like how Cabin in the Woods did it, where if if they don't die on screen, they're not dead. So yeah, the girl got stabbed a bunch of times, right?
Right.
But then it goes to another scene. You don't actually get to see her when she falls down. You don't see her, so therefore she's not dead. Same thing with the dude. He got shot, but did he die? No, he got better, sort of thing.
Right.
And they say that in Cabin in the Woods, like, oh, as long as they're off screen, they don't really die. Whereas the one girl, she gets decapitated, and you're like, okay, she's kind of dead, you know. Uh, so, but I don't think they actually went for that. But I'm gonna just try to give it that shred of
Right.
between movie meta credit of subverting that.
Yeah. But I mentioned before that I think that the second movie, the first movie too, but the second movie more so, they're kind of like these sketch comedy movies set in like using the horror plot as a setting.
Yeah,
And I think that the sketches that we see our gross out stuff, which I don't think that gross out comedy is always bad. I think it is 90% of the time bad because it's cheap, because it's easy. Like I said, a Carmen Electra, you just put a fart noise over in post and like ha 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 ha.
it's like the canned laughter from a sitcom.
Right, and you can have there can be good gross out humor. I think Borat comes to mind, where they're using that as like a subversion of like things that you're expecting, and it really like there you like it says something. It, I'm not gonna go on about how important Borat as a movie, but I think that after that, like gross out comedy kind of went down. You also have really cheap slapstick stuff, especially in the second one. It's
With
just,
a cat. I mean, that whole
yeah,
thing.
it's just like whatever.
The Charlie's Angels gimmick. I'm gonna call it a gimmick because I
Right.
don't know what it really
Well,
does.
so that's the next thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to get into this, and this is what's going to drive the conversation going forward. Unless you have anything else to say,
No, no, yeah. Let's continue.
random side gags and references to shit that has nothing to do with the movie at all.
And that dates your movie. It makes it unable to be watched in the future because you don't know if people are gonna watch that sort of
Not only does
things
it
you're
date,
referencing.
not only does it date your movie, but it it took away it like just completely dominated the entire genre of spoof movies from this point forward. So I mentioned Jason Friedberg, and Aaron Seltzer. They were writers for the first movie. They left and were not part of the second movie. And the second movie sucked, so you might think, oh, maybe they were like good writers and maybe, they went on to better things. No. They went on to make epic movie, disaster movie, date movie, Meet the Spartans, Vampires Suck, and this is the spoof movies of my like teenage years, the things that I think of. And these movies suck. And they do exactly what the scary movies do, but on a level that goes beyond.
I mean, it's just complete like take scene from other movie, add something ridiculous to it, end
Right.
scene from movie, and then transition,
Exactly.
rinse and repeat.
And you can see that starting in these movies, the scene where they throw in Prince for some reason, a guy who looks like Prince, and they're like,
Hmm.
"Look, guys, it's Prince." And then there's the part where Marlon Wayans is going, "What's up?" on the phone. I actually
Hmm.
like that because I think that's a cool
That's a meme. That's pretty much a meme from
exactly.
that time.
It's a meme, but it also like it is what you think of when you think of 2001 in culture, at least for me. So I'm glad I got to see that. And then in the second one where the parrot goes, "You are the weakest link." I
Hmm.
remember that. I did not see these movies as a kid, but I remember that from the trailer for Scary Movie 2 because I remember being a little kid and I knew the weakest link and I'm like, "Oh, the parrot said you are the weakest link." But that's it. It's just stupid. It has nothing to do with the movie. He's just saying that. The part where the old people are rapping in the beginning that I said I
Hmm.
wanted to come back to, that is this. That is just a random pop culture reference. And
Yeah. Oh,
so
look at a priest doing a rap song that has all these bad words in it. You know how
yeah.
funny.
So after Scary Movie 2, the Wayans brothers actually left the Scary Movie franchise. And
Hmm.
it kind of split where the Scary Movie franchise actually went, believe it or not, to David Zucker of Airplane and The Naked Gun and that whole franchise, and he brings in Leslie Nielsen. And don't worry, it doesn't get better; it actually gets worse. But those movies are more, if anything, because I've seen those. I would call those movies boring. Like,
Mm.
as opposed to the Friedberg and Seltzer movies, your Meet the Spartans, your epic movies, and those movies are just straight dumb. And that's where you get to, like, Meet the Spartans, for example. I saw that movie when I was that age, when it came out. It is the most it's one of the most like egregious examples of using the imagery rather than the tropes. So
Mm.
they dress everyone up like Spartans, and you think about 300, but all the jokes are at the expense of whatever the hell was going on in, I want to say 2007. Hold on, let me meet the Spartans. That movie, 2006. So it was just like those were the references. Like there was just
Mm.
like Shrek for some reason, which is
American Idol, they had at
yeah,
the
yeah,
end.
yeah. He kicked Sanjaya. It was fucking Sanjaya from the American Idol. Like that's who he kicks into the pit. They have shaved bald head Britney Spears show up with like her baby. Like that's what they're doing with these movies.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
so
it's,
that there. Go ahead.
oh, sorry, yeah. When you're trying to when you're trying to make fun of things that have happened throughout that time period, it just it shortens the lifespan of your movie. And instead of because tropes are sort of immortalized throughout our culture. So if you're gonna make fun of a horror movie, the a movie that makes fun of the horror tropes back in, let's say, during Scary Movie 1, and then you take a movie like, let's say, Cabin in the Woods, both of them should be equally watchable if they're doing things right. And I think, let's say, in another decade from now, if there's another movie that wants to satirize the horror trope, you'd be able to look at that and Cabin in the Woods and say, okay, they draw very similar things. Maybe they look at the trope in a different way or make fun of it in a different way, but you can tell, you could still watch Cabin in the Woods a decade from now and say, oh, okay, that's where they're going with this.
Right. So so yeah, funny thing, if you go on to Freiberg and Seltzer's Wikipedia page and you look at their filmography, every director has their filmography. It shows all the movies they directed, and it'll give you like little check marks that show, did they write it, did they direct it, did they produce it.
Mm-hmm.
Freiberg and Seltzer also have 4 extra columns. The Rotten Tomatoes approval rating, which I have thoughts about Rotten Tomatoes. It's not perfect. It's actually not even good, but it does help you at the lowest end of the spectrum. It's not very accurate at the high end. It
Mm-hmm.
has the Metacritic numbers, it has the budget, and it had the worldwide gross. You don't normally see that on most directors. They have it here, though, just to highlight the downfall of these men's careers.
Oh,
Um,
geez.
the Rotten Tomatoes, every movie except for Scary Movie is single digits. Scary Movie is at a 54, which, again, Rotten Tomatoes isn't great, but I think in this case, 54 for Scary Movie, it's fine. I think that's a pretty good rating.
Again,
It
yeah, during its time, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll let you have this one
right.
little thing,
It
and then
is
let's move on.
it is marginally good enough to justify its existence, and
Exactly.
nothing more.
It
And
is also a product of its time. It
that's
was one
why
of those.
that's why slightly above 50% is exactly where it belongs.
Mhm.
Everything else is single digits. But then you get into the budgets, and this is kind of interesting. These movies, up until 2008, cleaned up. They made a lot of money. And
Yeah.
then in 2008, Disaster Movie, which I've seen, is bad, but no worse than any of the ones that came before it, tanked. It actually
Mm.
made a profit of like, looks like 10 million. But if you consider like advertising and marketing, that's not good. You want to see like at least double the money and or more. But even from there, then they start losing money. There's a movie called The Starving Games, which is a Hunger Games spoof.
Yeah.
They spent 4.5 million on that. They only made 3.8 million. Then there's a movie, a Fast and Furious movie spoof called Super Fast that
Mhm.
made they spent 20 million on this, and they only made 2 million. So yeah,
Jesus.
their careers tanked. Oh wow,
Well,
they're from New Jersey. Look at that. Or at least
our
Freiburg is.
proudest.
Yay. Maybe we'll.
Well, I want to sort of commentate on that about how the sort of the downfall of them making gross profits is because
I have
One
a
thing.
I have a
Oh,
theory, but you go.
okay. So my theory is that uh, every movie from Scary Movie onward was it had its plot and it had its jokes, and the success of the movie, in my opinion, at least with this genre, is how good the jokes are. Now you can have if you can have a movie with no plot and you can just string jokes all the entire way. If all of the if all of the jokes are at least funny to an extent, your movie will at least break even, I think. If you're going to rely on just jokes, like just making an entire SNL comedy skit. But what I think is happening is that they keep using the same kind of jokes over and over again, and they become stale, but they're not creative enough to work in other things like plot, character development, to sort of hold the foundation of those jokes. So when you rely on it, when your movie relies on just joke after joke after joke after joke, hey, remember this movie, fart, then you're gonna start seeing takeaways from your profits, and I think that's what happened here. Is that pretty much the entire dynasty of these movies? They kept trying to rely on the same trope, and it just kept getting diminishing returns because they didn't want to spread, they didn't want to angle out from what they were doing.
So here's what I think happened. I think these movies are not needed anymore. I think that, I mean, the only one that the critics even gave a slight pass to was Scary Movie, but audiences kept seeing these movies up until around 2008, 2000. And I think that these movies actually served a bit of a purpose during that time. They were that they were like, you go to the movie to see gross shit, to see stupid slapstick, and to see unending pop culture references, stuff that that pushes the level on to a degree that you're not going to see on television, that you're not going to see in other movies. But what started to happen around 2009 that might make these movies completely obsolete?
Was it YouTube? It was just.
YouTube.
Mhm.
YouTube, internet culture, just memes in general. These movies, you said it before, they're memes.
Mhm.
You go Meet the Spartan. Meet the Spartans is just a 2 hour long meme fest. It is a
Mhm.
meme fest for 2000. What is that? 8? I said 6.
Six, I believe, six
This
or
says
seven.
this says 8 now, so I'm gonna split the difference. Say 7.
Okay.
It's just it's the meme culture of 2007. Like, hey guys, remember Sanjaya? Remember Britney Spears shaved her head? Like that. That is like where the memes were. And I'm not saying that there weren't internet memes at that time, but like they were like, the you had to be really like in the know with the internet to have memes at that time. Normie memes were like completely within the realm of these bullshit movies, not just spoof movies, all like stupid bro comedy movies. Like that's where you got your memes.
Mhm.
We don't need it now. We got the internet. If you want gross out stuff, you will find grosser stuff in the internet than you will ever find on any of these movies. You don't need this for slapstick. You don't need it for your memes. None of these movies there's no need for them, and so people stopped going to see them.
Actually, you bring up a good point with that because you have these other movies now. I might be wrong because of the release date, but only the good movies during that time rose to become memes. So instead of those who like Scary Movie and Epic Movie and all them, they just regurgitated the memes of the time. Um,
Memes, but they made their own memes out of the popular culture.
mhm. And in doing so, if but then you have movies like Anchorman, whose writing and stuff and things like that, they had the slapstick, they had the the gross out, just a little bit though, just touches on it, but due to its good writing, its slight improvs, and its story, it was able to rise above what it was probably meant to do, and became a good transition of a meme into the internet culture.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I even consider Anchorman in the same like sport as these movies. Anchorman movies, Adam McKay movies, Judd Apatow movies, all the movies of that era, the good ones, the bad ones, they're all still movies. These things, ironically, even though they all have movie in the name, none of them are movies. They're
Mm.
just 2 hour long sketch comedy shows set within the context of plot of franchises that you recognize, and an excuse to dump out all of the memes of the time and give film or give like young teenage cinema goers a chance to get their meme rocks off, basically. um so yeah, I think if you ask me, I think that's why these movies went away. And unless you have anything more to say, James, I want to transition into the last thing we're going to do, our fun little thought experiment to try and see if we can make one of these movies today.
Well, actually, I think this will sort of transition into it. Is the fact that um, if we view these movies as maybe not as parodies, because they are parodies in their spoofs,
Right.
but it seems to me that they were just sort of softly categorized as those kinds of movies, and instead, yeah, we see them as these just meme decades of the regurgitation of memes for that decade. And in doing that, when trying to maybe reproduce or replicate the kind of quote unquote style of these movies, maybe if we the way these movies would actually survive is if we treated it more like a parody, and rather than uh, the decade rewind, the YouTube rewind of the time, you know.
Right. So I was thinking there are there are two routes that I had in mind to go down, and we could discuss and we could decide which one we want to go. um I want to do, so we this is our movie, right? We're doing a scary, we're going to call it Scary Movie. It's going to be a reboot. So we're planning our own franchise here. It's going to be a fairly hard reboot. None of the we're not keeping any of the characters. The Wayans brothers are not coming back. If Anna Faris, if she wants a cameo, she can have one, but I think she's the only one who gets one. Um Maybe Regina Hall, because she's also was in a lot of them. But yeah, so we're taking it out of the context of the old movies. We're putting it in a completely different format. So let's think about it, right? Because these meme movies, they're gone. There's no need for them.
Mm-hmm.
Gross out movies, they're gone. There's no need for them. None of that stuff is still around. But you know what still is still around? What is still around? Cheap horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
There are still a lot of that to draw from. So let's find a good one, something that really works within the context of today. I think a good example, and you can disagree if you want. I think Unfriended is a something a road you can go down, something you can spoof. Are you
Mm-hmm.
familiar with the Unfriended movies?
Yes.
Yeah. So first and foremost, whole thing takes place on a computer screen, which means it's
Mm-hmm.
super cheap to produce. So we have this plan. We call up Jason Blum because he makes really cheap movies, and we say, "All right, we got this plan. It's a super cheap movie. We're gonna make fun of Unfriended." And so here are my two options. Right? You can go the hard spoofing line, where you are now spoofing the Friedberg and Seltzer and Wayans and Zucker brothers, where you're making fun of them. And by in doing that, we're going to make this a movie about memes. So
Mm-hmm.
so it all takes place in the internet, and it's a friend group, right? And they have a group chat, and they have to kick somebody off the group chat. So like the main character, his friend asks him to kick this guy on the group chat who hasn't been on very long, but he used to date his friend. We'll give them names. So the main character is Drew, and he's just playing. He's like, well, it has to be something that we can broadcast. So he's Twitch streaming. He has a Twitch stream. We have to
Mm-hmm.
call it something different. And then he comes off of that and he gets like a little video call, and it's his friend Leah, and she's like, "Drew, I really need you to do me a favor. I need you to kick Ricky off of the group chat." Um and Drew's like, "Oh, you finally sick of him?" I'm like, "Look, everyone is. It's not just me. I do it myself, but I don't want to be like the stereotypical bitchy ex-girlfriend. I need you to do it for me." And Drew mulls it over. He talks to a couple of his friends. He finally decides to kick him. But even though he kicks the guy off the group chat, he still keeps chatting with them, even though he's out of it. And that's like our unfriended thing. So nobody dies, but he's literally like a guy they removed from the group chat, but he's still chatting with them. And
Mm.
then when we're going to go the meme route, so they're going to all be killed by memes, the memes that he's posting in the chat. But since memes have a very short shelf life, we have to go hardcore, just accept that and just go hardcore stale memes, the stalest memes that you can find. So like Rick Astley shows up and like kills one of them while
He stabs him while he's
yeah,
dancing.
yeah, exactly. Like everyone has to know, we know this is lame, and like that's what so you're kind of making fun of these movies by saying like we are going to just hardcore steer into the lame. And then really quick, the other option, if we don't want to go the hardcore lame, we still have the unfriended model where they're removing him from the group chat. This time, we spoof the scary movies by going annoyingly clean and wholesome. No one dies. They're just being kicked off of the group chat one by one. And they're freaking out as though they're being killed. But like it's just we're playing that up for how ridiculous that is because none of it means anything. And it's kind of spoofing like how much you actually care about these group chats. It doesn't.
Mm.
So what do you think?
That's a lot to digest.
I threw so much at you.
Yeah, no, but I do like the idea. Well, first of all, I like Unfriended. I like the idea of spoofing Unfriended because there is so much you can commentate on the social media culture, on the tropes of social media,
It's
and
easy too.
you can spoof that while also providing good commentary on it. So something like, um, maybe it might not be on the lines of like of what you're thinking about, but what appears into my head is sort of, one of the friends is like, guys, I tweeted something and I shouldn't have tweeted it. I shouldn't have tweeted it. And then like as the dislikes or as the retweets rise up further and further, the guy gets more and more anxious and then goes insane and then does the thing that he tweeted, like it, because I don't know, maybe he tweeted it sarcastically and
Right.
then eventually because of his anxiety goes and does it.
Well,
But sorry, go ahead.
so in Unfriended, like the whole shtick is that they all like kill themselves.
Yeah,
So we could do that, but that might be a little dark. I don't know if I want to go that route. We'll consider it. We'll consider it.
I mean, I also do like the fact of like maybe instead of kicking somebody off the group, something happens where the person leaves the group. I think you were saying this before, and when they leave the group, that's them killing themselves. And then
Right.
until there's one person left, and then he can go and do something there as far as like like maybe the way out is by leaving the group, and then once everybody leaves, even though like to the audience it's them like killing themselves, it's like, no, don't leave the group, like, oh, and they're gone forever, you don't get to hear about them. But then something happens to the main character at the end where I don't know, he goes insane or he does actual bad things. Like you sort of subvert that where you think the baddest thing that is going to happen is them leaving the group, but instead like something actually happens to the person that survives. You know, uh, it's it's really hard to sort of. Do you know what my issue is? My issue is I'm actually trying to think of a good horror movie and not a good scary movie.
Right. And
That's where I'm having issues.
my biggest issue with my first idea was, well, you could try to make fun of scary movie and epic movie and disaster movie, but everyone's criticism, and it'll be very valid, is why the hell are you spoofing Friedberg and Seltzer movies in 2019? They're completely irrelevant now. So that's why I thought, maybe we avoid that commentary altogether and we're just straight up trying to spoof Unfriended. And we're not doing like stupid gags. We're making a straight movie, like we're playing it straight, but like it's completely unthreatening, and it's just like they're all freaking out over memes.
Yeah. Huh. Because yeah, if the meme, because yeah, the only the aspect of using memes as a driving device is pretty much making fun of the whole scary movie thing in general. So we don't even have to add anything else according to that. So we can put scary movie and the rest of them on the shelf, because introducing memes into the story itself as like the literal meme
Right.
is pretty much the commentary on that anyway. But man,
We'd have to get across to people that that's what we're doing, and we can't like make them listen to this episode of our podcast first. I mean, we could try that, but I don't think
mhm.
that would go over particularly.
I'm sure there's some way to write it in, like where if there's some, they pick the most popular, the most memorable thing out of the scary movie series, not from the epic movies and all that bullshit, but the scary movie itself,
Hmm.
and then make that one of the memes. So
The
I'll
hard thing about that, though, is that the most recognizable thing for me from those movies are things that are recognizable from other movies that they're spoofing.
exactly, yeah.
Like my mind goes immediately to Marlon Wayans with his afro, with the blanket up to his neck, and he's holding up there, and he goes, "I see dead people,"
Yeah,
which is straight out of the
Sixth
Sixth
Sense.
Sense. Yeah, and yeah, because I remember that from the advertising as a kid, and that's actually, even though we've long moved past this, that's another part of the first movie that I actually appreciated, where he's like, "I see dead people," and then his friend's like, "Damn, that's some good shit."
I know what stuck to me was at the very end of the ending of the first movie when they're trying to explain everything, and this the was his name was Ray, the gay guy.
Yeah,
He's the entire movie. He's sort of like the straight man, ironically enough, as in like these calm, collect. He's kind of cool, hiding his homosexuality. Even when he's doing gay things, he's still like suave and whatnot. And at the very end, he goes completely bonkers for no reason. He goes, "But wait, there's more." And you sit there, and that just took me completely by surprise because of his entire character in the beginning. And how he was able to, he's probably the one who lasted the longest aside from Anna Faris to sort of keep in character and not be
right.
ridiculous about it. And if there was you can make that into a meme because it's such a common phrase. And I think that would be my choice for bringing a meme from that movie, like making something in that movie a meme and still actually be effective as a meme in the internet culture.
Hmm.
But that would be the only thing I could do with that.
Yeah, I hate to start us off with like saying that we couldn't do it, but like I
Well,
mean, so here's the thing: is that we on this show we're going to come to impasses, right? And there are going to be times we're going to have to just live by our name and just be total hacks, just
mhm.
straight up hacks. Because when we look at something, because you can look at something and you can say, there's nothing that I can do with that property that could make it good. But you can always do something with it that would make people come and see the movie. So if we're just going the total straight up hack way of doing this, we make the movie with you got to South Park it. You got to make this movie as fast as freaking possible because these memes need to be fresh as they can be with movies. And the
Mhm.
reason why you don't see movies and memes in movies a lot is because movies take a while to make it, or to be made, and by the time it's out, the meme is dead.
Mhm.
But these movies, they're pretty cheap to produce. We could like snap it out really quick. So you follow your unfriended thing, your unfriended route, and you just have everyone being murdered one by one by just like the freshest meme that you can find at the time, which in 3 months when the movie comes out will be a little dead, but people will recognize it. They'll see it, they'll laugh. They probably won't go and see the second one, but we can make that work at least.
Yeah, and what I like about this kind of concept is that it's there's two ways of doing this sort of the reboot is to do it for integrity's sake. If you take a movie that has so much potential
Right.
and you add a bunch of stuff to it and you're like, all right, like there's some things I didn't like, but if we just did these things, it would be amazing and it would just make it so much better and maybe a masterpiece in at least in our eyes. Or you can say, you know what, we're gonna do it for the money. Got to do it for the money because there's no way you're gonna survive that. Like this is gonna be this is no way it's going to work otherwise.
So let that be a preview then for all of you out there.
So we're
Because our name is Hack Job Studios, or at least it is for now.
I like Hack
And
Job Media. I think
Hack Job
media.
Media, Hack
Yeah,
Job Media. Okay,
we can go back and forth.
we'll work on it. We'll figure it out. But I think that has a very bit of a negative connotation. But we promise you all that we are probably going to be doing about as many things that we love as things that we hate. Right? You think that that's a
Yeah,
pretty good barometer.
I think also if we the the things we hate is the things we love is solely more based on like the passion of the movie, on like making, like wanting to make it as good as it can be. And then with the things we hate, it's a good challenge
Exactly.
to flex your creative muscles. And even if we can't have an exact one-to-one way of putting things together, we can at least provide the format. Like with this movie, you say, okay, let's take the basis being unfriended. The driving point is this is memes, and then this is how we can spoof this movie, sort of thing. So at least provide the stepping stones of how to make this sort of reboot, instead of making it like an exact, like this is what I would do sort of thing.
All right. Well, do we have anything more to say about Scary Movie?
Um, to be honest, I think it served its sentence.
Yeah.
Anything on top of making like direct spoofs is going to be a difficult time. I think it's, but to also with our pop culture, I think the genre itself is going to be immortal. I truly think that you can take any series of movies, make a spoof of it for cheap, and people will see it.
Yeah.
It all depends. And if you made it just a little bit different, where maybe instead of a string of cheap gag jokes, if you just refined it just a little bit, added a touch of plot development and character development while still spoofing the tropes of the movie rather than the scenes of the movie, you can the idea of the spoof or the parody movie can still exist pretty much forever.
Yeah. So, as a final review, Scary Movie and Scary Movie 2, maybe it's worth your time if you want a little bit of a jolt of nostalgia for what people thought was funny in 2000 and 2001.
Maybe
If you
see if
have
you can gross out your friends.
Yeah, and if you have to just see one of them, absolutely the first one. Don't bother with the second one. It's boring as hell. This is probably normally where we would talk about what we're going to be covering next week. I don't know if you had any ideas, James.
Well, there's I did see some of your notes previously. I like the Fantastic Four. I would
I
love
do
to do something like that.
too. My idea for that, though, is that I'd like to do that. I mean, I don't know if we're going to be releasing these soon. I'd like to. And if
Mhm.
that's the case, I would like that to release around the time that Endgame. So
Okay.
we can have like a kind of let's talk about Marvel when Marvel. And same, I want to save the Star Wars one for when Star Wars comes out.
Yes.
That's going to be quite the undertaking. I am excited as hell for that one, but we have to be realistic here. We have to, you know, get everything up and running before we tackle something like Star Wars.
Hmm. Other things is we can discuss the Mummy, uh, in
Ooh.
that series.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
things like we can also, as far as like in the realm of remaking, it's kind of it might be a little difficult. We can do things like Mystery Men, some a lesser Watchmen. Pretty much that's what that movie's all about.
I would
Um,
actually love to do Mystery Men. Maybe not right away. I really like the idea though that you just put out there of the Mummy. And
okay.
I think, I mean, we don't have to settle on that right now, but I would say if I were to do the Mummy, I would say go and watch the is it Brandon Fraser? Is he
Brendan
the one?
Fraser,
Yeah, we go and watch maybe one or two, maybe just one of the Brandon Fraser ones. And then we watch the Tom Cruise
Tom
one.
Cruise one.
Yeah, we talk about the differences and we talk about the dark universe, how it failed,
How we could
and
do it.
what we would do to make it not fail, which is hard because those honestly those movies have no business having a cinematic universe, but I mean, if we didn't put ourselves in situations where we had to challenge ourselves, there wouldn't be any point in this show.
Yes.
I
So
would I would love to do the Mummy.
let's do this. Well, Mummy 1, the Brendan Fraser Mummy 1,
Hmm.
and the Tom Cruise Mummy, and for extra credit, for extra reading, the movie Van Helsing. Because if you're going to tie if you want this cinematic universe to happen, Van Helsing is the probably one of the only movies that actually attempts to tie all those monsters in together.
Okay.
So, at
All
least in Van
right.
Helsing, you have Frankenstein, the werewolf, and Dracula, and a touch of Jekyll and Hyde in the beginning. Uh, I'm not saying that that's the best rendition of putting those monsters together, but at least it's
Isn't
a
what's that one Sean Connery movie?
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That
Yeah.
is another good extra credit reading or watching.
Okay. All
So,
right.
I would say those four movies, the first two movies though, is a must.
Okay. All right. I like this. So let's tentatively say that's probably what we're doing for next episode.
Okay. Yep. I'm completely down with that.
All right. Are we ready to say goodbye?
Yes.
All right.
Until then, we will see you all next time.
Yeah, and we don't know if this is going to get released, but I hope it is. I had a lot of fun.
Me too.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.